It used to be that we were just worried about spam and phishing was kind of a side problem. Now the problem is mostly phishing. There are very organized gangs that are really persistent and take advantage of every little loophole and edge case that they can find to get phishing messages delivered.
Yeah, back in the days, it was some Nigerian prince offering you millions of dollars, right? Now it's much more sophisticated.
Well, now you've got the German federal police making 6 inquiries a day made to hosting providers. I think what they're using AI to do is all the stuff that everybody else is using AI to do. What happens if you ask the AI to generate a website with a really convincing Microsoft login screen? They can actually look at data. They can try sending mail through our platform, collect information, and then they can ask AI, hey, what do you think of this email delivery stats? I'm trying to figure out why I'm getting rate limited. That's why I say we've had to move into more machine learning because the hand-coded rules and thresholds just don't work anymore.
You know, everyone is saying that AI is such a great thing. We are changing the world now. And every company that handles security has such a headache because of it.
WordPress is particularly vulnerable to being hacked because it has a very rich plugin marketplace. The attacks are just massive. There are companies like Monarchs that have built signature systems to detect security vulnerabilities, but they're in a cat and mouse game as well. And there's always going to be new vulnerabilities to attack.
My guest is Ken Simpson, the founder of MailChannels, the most popular email delivery service in the web hosting industry, solving the spam and phishing problems that hosting companies face every day. MailChannels sends email for over 2.4 million small business users, and their sophisticated spam and phishing detection system processes over 250,000 email sender behavior data points every second. We talk about what the hosting world was like back in 2003 when he founded MailChannels, how his company has evolved over the years, and what lies ahead for the industry with his unique perspective on it. Before we move on, a huge thank you to our diamond sponsor Blackwall, infrastructure security built for web hosters, engineered for engineers. We're also proud to be backed by our gold sponsors, Extendify, NameHero, and Panel Alpha. Thanks to their support, we can keep pushing web hosting today forward. If you'd like to join our supporters and help us grow even more, just reach out.
Ken, thank you for joining. And I guess let's start with the basics, like with everyone. Tell me about your story. Tell me, how did you get into the industry? My guess is that you weren't really aiming for the web hosting initially, but you got there with your product, obviously. But yeah, tell me about your beginnings.
Yeah, okay. So it's great to be on your podcast, Conrad. You and I have known each other for many years. And I got to say, okay, I'm a computer engineer. After engineering school, I went to work for a startup company that was developing software development tools for open source programming languages. At the time, they were really at the cutting edge, and they made some of the best developer tools for Perl and Python and even TCL, if you can remember the TCL or Tickle language. And I was surrounded.
No, not really.
You don't? Okay, well, yeah, it was a long time ago. And I was surrounded by really brilliant people. Like the guy who worked next to me at my desk was Ingi.net, who is the inventor of YAML, or the co-inventor of YAML.
No, okay.
You know, one of the other guys I worked with was one of the co-inventors of XML. So I had these really great, software gurus around me, and they taught me some good skills. And I really got to see what an excellent software development environment and world looks like, what it's like to work with the best people in the world quite early in my career. But I was an impatient young person, and although I got to work with the most incredible people, in 2001 I got really tired of grinding away on code. I remember I spent 2 months digging through the source code for the Mozilla browser in order to find a bug that was preventing us from using this particular source code syntax coloring engine properly on Linux, specifically, right? And it took 2 months of learning the code and going down through all these levels to actually find the bug, and I was losing my mind. So I left and spent a few months just kind of on sabbatical, and then I got back together with Engi.net, and we created a Wi-Fi hotspot company That was my first startup back in the fall of 2001. And that startup was fun. It was a wild ride because it was the dot-com crash, so there was no funding. Like, we got free office space because the industry was dead. And I worked at that for about 2 years before heading off again and leaving it in someone else's hands. And then I got together with another coworker from that company, from the same company I started out at, and we would meet at a coffee shop every week to brainstorm startup ideas. And we knew we wanted to do something. We didn't quite know what. And eventually, we came up with this idea for a disposable email address service, and we came up with the name MailChannels for it. And so that was that was the genesis in the fall of 2003, and we just kind of worked on it one day a week for another 6 to 8 months. And then sometime in 2004, we switched to full time, and I started looking for angel investors, and we cobbled together this tiny bit of funding. And MailChannels was officially born sometime in 2004, and we started working with salaries in 2005. So it was a really, really long time ago. But we spent the first 7 years or so really just learning how to build a company. I didn't know what I was doing. I was mostly a software person. I hated all the business stuff. I didn't know how to do sales. And
do you still, or
do I still hate the sales and marketing stuff?
Yeah, are you still into the code, or?
Absolutely. I still code. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
But I learned to respect sales and marketing in those first 7 years. I learned to act, and I did a training program with other entrepreneurs where I actually learned some proper skills about how to assess a market opportunity, how to put down some basics about, what you're trying to sell and to whom and why they should buy it. Very basic stuff like that. And in 2012, by the time it was 2012, we had built this really scalable email filtering system that was built on top of the Nginx web proxy. So the idea was that you could put this software inside of a network and then transparently filter all of the email coming out of the network at really high speed and run it against spam filters to try and police the traffic. At the time in 2010, 2011, the big problem in the spam world was botnets generating spam traffic deep inside telecom networks. So they were, infecting home routers and people's PCs and even mobile phones and pumping out billions of spam messages out over port 25 on these telecom networks. And, the good thing about that problem is that at some point, Spamhaus released the PBL, the policy block list, and then telecom networks started blocking port 25 altogether. But for some networks, they couldn't block it for various reasons. And so we created this filtering software. And our hope was that we would deploy it all over the world in telecom networks. What actually happened is we got a few customers, but it was really, really hard to sell to telecom companies. So we didn't really make that much progress. But one day, we got an inquiry from UK2 Group, which was a hosting company based in London, with some really, with some people involved who are very well known in the industry and have gone on to do great things. Guys like Ditlev Bredal, who created a VPS software company that did really well, and many others. Nick Nelson was part of the UK2 group at that time, and he's gone off and done great things. And so that gave me my first exposure to the hosting industry. And because we had business from UK2, we decided we better start selling to hosting companies. So we started going to Hosting Con and networking and meeting people. And along the way, I met the CEO of Arvix, which was a hosting company that was bootstrapped with about 90 employees, 500,000 domains, run out of his basement and fully virtual. It was a really wild little company. And Arvand, the founder, had spent something like $100,000 on a third-party spam filtering software to try to deal with all of the spam that was coming out of his shared hosting accounts. And it was killing him. His IPs were constantly getting blocked. He didn't know what to do. And so We initially just tested out our transparent filtering software and tweaked it so that it would work with shared hosting servers. But what we found was that it needed a lot of babysitting. It needed a lot of fine tuning, and so one day I reached out to Arvon and I said, "Look, why don't we just host this for you? We'll like stand it up inside of Amazon or something, and we will." Host basically an email delivery service just for you. And he agreed to that. We set some arbitrary price per month and off to the races. It had no user interface. It was literally just like an SMTP relay.
Yeah.
And then we built on top of this transparent filtering platform that we had built, this really scalable email proxy layer. We built a service that had a policy system, plugins where we could put content filters in. And then we slowly and steadily built a console for it, a billing platform. And anyways, sometime in the fall of 2013, we started selling it to hosting companies. And it really was a hit. It really worked well. And we got some customers among really good names that are still known in the hosting industry today within that period from 2013 to 2014. And from that point forward, we were a cloud service company. Like the software side was still there, generating a tiny bit of revenue, but over the coming years, we decided to focus entirely on the cloud, and that's been the business ever since 2013. Delivering email for hosting companies, we now have about 25% of the top 100 hosting providers who use our service. We're dealing with billions of messages per month, tens of millions of end users, and by one measure, by the number of domains, we're the largest email delivery service on the internet, next to Google and Microsoft, who have kind of like individual enterprise accounts. We host the maximum number of domains for a pure transactional email service. So that's kind of the origin story.
So from what you're saying, the main concept of MailChannels, what it is right now, or what I know MailChannels is mostly about, and that's how it is existing in the industry. Was in 2013, was already shaping up. So maybe let's talk about it now, because it's been 12 years over from that moment. How is this now? How is spam and like is this still the problem? Is MailChannel still needed? Is this like evolving into some different kind of threats that hosters have to take care of, and you are also providing with MailChannels? How does it work right now compared to
I
these
think
old
that
days?
it's, there's been a lot of changes in the email industry over the last 12 years. Probably the biggest shift in the industry overall has been that everybody has moved their email inbox into one of the big cloud platforms, and they're dominated by Google and Microsoft, who make tens of billions a year selling Google Workspace accounts and Microsoft 365 accounts. So when you're delivering
Exchange, right? The things like that.
Yeah, exactly. And so when you're delivering email, for the most part, you're reaching accounts that are either hosted by Google or Microsoft, and you have to play by their rules. To a lesser extent, Yahoo is still a player, telecoms are still a player, but the vast majority of traffic goes to Google and Microsoft. And in the last 2 years, they have set up really stringent requirements for traffic quality and reputation. And they're enforcing requirements on senders to authenticate their domains and to keep complaint rates low. So, I would say right now, the biggest challenge is for a hosting provider. It's not so much the reputation of the IPs that they're sending out of. It's more that if they don't police their customers' traffic, their customers can end up getting a negative domain reputation and having difficulties delivering email. So the problem has evolved from just controlling spam to a more serious problem of trying to do things right for customers automatically so that their mail hits the inbox and doesn't get rejected or hit the spam folder. Phishing has also escalated into a more pressing problem than spam. It used to be that we were just worried about spam, and phishing was kind of a side problem. Now the problem is mostly phishing. There are very organized gangs that are really persistent and take advantage of every little loophole and edge case that they can find to get phishing messages delivered. And the blowback of that is that there are police inquiries made to hosting providers. And so, whereas in the past, hosting providers were fielding abuse reports, which is an annoyance, and maybe getting blacklisted once in a while, well, now you've got the German federal police, making 6 inquiries a day to lock down the data for one account or another, and you have to hire someone full-time just to deal with police reports. And there's legal consequences.
Is this really effective? The legal
I
procedures
don't know.
for trying to chase, because we are talking
Yeah.
about, back in the days it was some Nigerian prince offering you
Yeah.
millions of dollars, right? Now it's much more sophisticated from what you're
Totally.
saying.
Now it's business. Now it's business fraud. When we get a police inquiry, which is weekly, we get police inquiries regularly. And we're always just routing those police inquiries back to our own customers for handling. Invariably, what's happened is a small business has been defrauded. So the police will tell us, hey, this company got defrauded out of 50,000 euros. And this is a real case. Like, we're really building a case against the attacker. We need the information. It's not just mom and pop, losing 100 euros. It's tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of euros at a time. And as an email delivery service provider, we have to do a really good job of stopping these gangs. So whereas in the past we might have gotten away with hand-coded rules, looking at regex patterns and subject lines and whatnot, we now have to have full-blown machine learning models, billion parameter models that are looking at dozens of different elements in messages and the reputation of senders, their behavior over time, and fusing all of that together into an embedding space and, vector stores, like all kinds of concepts that we never had to work with in the past. And if we don't do that well, then end customers of hosting providers can't get their mail delivered reliably. So it's pretty crucial. Yeah.
We have recently been implementing MailChannels into Panel Alpha. Actually, it happened yesterday, literally yesterday. And we've seen that, the amount, even just applications by default send so much junk out of the box. Like, you don't have to set up anything. It just automatically sends over all these emails. How does it work with MailChannels that it, I guess you have to filter out some automated responses. You need to make sure that the right ones are being delivered. How does it actually work?
That's a big question. I mean, one thing I can tell you is that our investment of engineering resources into accuracy. So accuracy is the idea of filtering out the bad stuff and keeping in the good stuff. Our investment into that, it has been continuous, week after week since 2012. There has never been a time that we haven't had engineers working on that problem. And, and it's now a bigger effort than it ever has been before. So that should give you an indication of the scale of the problem that we're facing and the technology that we've developed, right? It's not the kind of technology that you could just wake up one day and decide you're going to build naively. You have to actually face off against the bad guys. It's a bit like being a defense company, right? Where the best drones are built, it's in Russia and the Ukraine, because they're fighting each other. And they are it's only in the battlefield that you learn the lessons that you need in order to have a technology that's actually effective. And so similarly, in the email security game, you have to be out there in the battle, fighting it day after day, week after week. So in a nutshell, we take in email messages from web hosting providers. They basically relay all of the mail from their WordPress sites and cron jobs and, anything, webmail accounts, anything they need to send out to the internet. They just shove it into our SMTP relay. So we, at any point in the day, we get a connection. We have no idea who it's really coming from. The first thing we do is we look at the message headers, right? So we unpack the message headers because they can tell us a lot. Most email platforms, whether it's coming from a WordPress site or it's going through some kind of MTA or webmail system, there will be certain headers that get injected by the mail platform or essentially by layers of the network. And by paying attention to what's in those headers, we can synthesize a notion of who originated that message. It's a kind of fuzzy concept, right? But we know who the sender is. And then we look at the content of the message. So we send the content for analysis through a whole variety of algorithms and neural networks. We also look at all of the links in the message. We farm those out to third-party data sources to find out whether they're known phishing sites or suspicious domains or new domains, stuff like that. Then we look up the behavior history of the sender. So we'll fetch a few dozen data points that tell us about what else we've seen from this sender in the last day, hours, week, various time periods. All that stuff goes into a big policy system and it spits out a judgment. It says, okay, based on the information we have, we should rate limit this sender, we should let them through, or we should block them. The other thing that we determine is which set of IPs should we be sending this message out of. We have different IP address pools that are designed to group senders of a certain quality and behavior together. So there's a pool for people who send out consistently good email for at least a week. That's the good pool. There's another pool that is designated for brand new senders that we've never seen before. And there's another pool for forwarded traffic. And there's, various other pools. By grouping traffic that is closely related, we can isolate the impact of quality issues where we might get a bad guy who has worked past one of our defenses and ends up, impairing our reputation with Microsoft, right? So at least that traffic is contained within an IP address pool, and the impact is only felt by other senders who are of a similar quality level. After all of that, we send the mail out. We pick an IP address. It goes out to the internet. And then we watch for the feedback. We watch to see what the email receivers say about the message. So we unpack all of the responses that are generated in real time. If Microsoft rejects the message with a particular code, we know what that code means. And then that feedback goes into our database as a behavior data point that we can log against that particular sender so that if they try to send again in the future, we know that their message got rejected and for what reason. And here's the crazy thing. The system that tracks behavior of senders has to keep track of millions of unique senders in real time. And in order to do that, it's writing 250,000 to 350,000 data points per second. And it's querying a similar volume per second out of the database. And it has to be able to fetch all of those queries in under a millisecond. So it has to be able to do that 1,000 times a second. Otherwise, we can't keep up with the volume and we'll start delaying mail.
That's what I wanted to ask, is that the whole algorithm sounds pretty complex, but at the same time, we're talking about such a volume and that it has to be so effective to handle all these messages. So you were talking about 250,000 of emails basically sent every second.
It's not a 250,000 emails sent per second. It's 250,000 behavioral data points written to this behavior tracking database every second. That's the real scale challenge. That is a component that we've been continuously working on for 12 years.
And does the reason why you have moved over to cloud and made it as a single solution instead of being like a self-hosted, right? Because it wouldn't be manageable.
Yeah, I mean the self-hosted stuff, that was based on Nginx, it's still out there in the field. We still run that in certain telecom networks and hosting networks, and it's very capable. It has the same behavioral analysis system running, and there are sites that are processing thousands of messages a second through that software. But up in the cloud, obviously we have a single endpoint that receives email for all of our customers, smtp.mailchannels.net. Everything goes there. And we don't know what's going to happen at a particular time or date. So we have to be ready. We have to be ready to receive anything at any time and be just as responsive, regardless. Yeah. So we could get 15,000 messages injected in 1 second, and have to deal with it all. Right. So but over the course of the day, we auto scale our services, and some aspects of our service go up and down by a factor of 10 in the course of a regular day.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Constantly scaling
impressive.
Up and down.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
All right. So is AI having an impact in this? Mostly, what you're saying in the phishing aspect, that is AI the only thing that's changed, or what's else happening out there?
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's actually kind of hard to determine the extent to which the bad guys are using generative AI to actually run their campaigns. Most of the traffic we see is still templatized. It's still like a phishing. They'll load a phishing kit onto a server, which is essentially a bunch of PHP scripts that they can hijack into a WordPress environment, and it'll have an ability to download templates and then fill them in with fields and send them out. So that the mail traffic from phishing gangs continues to be mostly template driven. But I think what they're using AI to do is all the stuff that everybody else is using AI to do. So like, how do you write a convincing email? How do you generate, graphics? How do you look, what happens if you ask the AI to generate a website with a really convincing Microsoft login screen that can be automated? So it's just allowing them to scale up their existing efforts. Uh, and to do research into effective techniques. They can actually look at data. They can try sending mail through our platform, collect information, and then they can ask AI, hey, what do you think of this email delivery stats? I'm trying to figure out why I'm getting rate limited, and then it'll come back and say, oh, you know what, it looks like they've got a thresholding function, and this is the approximate shape of it, so you should send no more than 100 messages per account. So we've had to that's why I say we've had to move into more machine learning because the hand-coded rules and thresholds just don't work anymore against these adversaries. Yeah, and at our end, one of the things that's been happening recently is the bad guys have figured out that we analyze the message headers to figure out who they are. So they've increasingly been manipulating the message headers. If they get into an environment where they can add extra headers or remove headers, then that's what they try to do. So we've seen them, they'll make like 3 copies of one header, or they'll just randomize the headers each time. And what that's caused us to do is switch over to a mode of operation where if you do that, you don't get a consistent sender ID. And if you don't have a consistent sender ID, then you can't establish a positive reputation. And we don't let you do much if you don't have a positive reputation, right? So we're shifting from a stance where we would trust you by default to a stance where we can't trust you by default. And you got to kind of prove yourself. It's not ideal for legitimate senders to be in that position, but we do have some workarounds for that where the hosting provider can effectively do some things to give us more confidence in the identifier that they're putting into the header. And then we know that we can tie into that information with more reliability.
It's another discussion with someone providing security to the industry that, everyone is saying that AI is such a great thing. We are changing the world now. And every company that handles security has such a headache because of it. The changes in this industry has so much accelerated, and so many people are just not aware of it, right? So this is actually very impressive. So you've mentioned that it's often that WordPress sites are being hacked, and phishing and the whole email sending logic is being injected into such sites. Is this the pretty common trend, or how do these guys are taking care of that?
Yeah, so WordPress is particularly vulnerable to being hacked because it has a very rich plugin marketplace, and the PHP environment itself is a little bit weak on the security side, but it's really the plugins that are being compromised all the time. The attack surface is just massive. There are companies like Monarchs, who will do a shout out to for their excellent work in this area, that have built signature systems to detect security vulnerabilities and attacks in progress and shut them down on WordPress sites. But they're in a cat and mouse game as well. And there's always going to be new vulnerabilities to attack. Even simple stuff like, phishing gangs will find someone's username and password out through one attack, and then they'll just log into the person's WordPress hosting account and directly manipulate it, directly load they don't even have to do a hack. It's just a password, right? And that is still by far the most common way that spam and phishing are getting sent out of a hosting environment, is through WordPress compromise. We don't see that changing anytime soon. it's a fundamental problem. It's a fundamental problem with the WordPress environment that is very, very tough to fix. I think there are, you've got like a large number of mostly unsophisticated WordPress users. They don't really know that much about security. Unless
Yeah.
the platform is totally locked down, which can make it less convenient to use, then you're going to have these vulnerabilities being exploited.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't know how you find the balance there, right? There's more work to be done, but the bad guys have all the time in the world and they've got a lot of money to be made. So they're always going to be a step ahead of the good guys
Yeah.
working to
Yeah.
protect these systems.
So let's talk about some more positive things, let's say. What opportunities do you see in terms of emails in the industry? Because I've seen that you've been recently involved with some pretty big products in on the market. So maybe let's talk about that.
Yeah, so one of our customers is Hostinger. They are
Mm-hmm.
currently, depending on how you measure it, like the number 2 or 3 hosting provider on the internet, which
Yeah.
is amazing.
Yeah.
Because
Growing fast.
back in 2016, they were, I don't know, like number 135 or something. They've really rocketed up the ladder to success, and we've been blown away by their growth. It's a really
Yeah.
extraordinary team and company. They
I'm a
seem to have a
huge fan
special
myself.
touch.
I'm a huge
Yeah,
fan myself. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Anyways, they have launched a few different email related products. One of which is called Reach. It's essentially an email campaign software for small businesses that makes it really easy to set up an email campaign that looks good and checks all the boxes where you're supposed to check boxes for getting your mail delivered. MailChannels is the sending layer for that product, and we've been working with them since the start, since they started developing that, and really developing our back end in tandem with their work on the front end to make sure that they work really well together. I think that hosting providers, as they conglomerate, as entities like World Host Group are buying up smaller players and centralizing technology, hosting providers are becoming more like SaaS application marketplaces. So
Mm-hmm.
they've got all of these SMB customers who initially came to them to buy hosting services. Now, what else do you want to sell them? I think that there's tremendous opportunity for hosting providers that can provide additional applications to sell to their existing customers that kind of move out of the range of traditional hosting offerings. It used to be you would just get your mailbox and maybe host your WordPress site and a few other things, maybe your e-commerce site through WooCommerce, right? That's still a really hot area. But I think by offering email campaign management services, other email marketing related services, marketing automation, the hosting industry can steal market share from pure play SaaS providers who have, for a variety of reasons, moved on from the smallest SMB customers. Right?
Mm-hmm.
A very typical thing that happens in SaaS, is a company will start. They're very friendly to everybody. They got really great pricing that little
Yeah.
customers love. And then when they get more successful, you notice that they start, increasing the bottom price tier and
Mm-hmm.
focusing more on the big enterprise customers because that's where all the money is.
Yeah.
Hosting providers, by contrast, they've always been a fan of the little guy. They
Yeah.
sell $5 a month plans to any coffee shop or restaurant or hair salon, and that will always be the case. So if they can come in and offer email services for $5 a month that allows a coffee shop to make a great impression with its customer list, they're going to make tons of money that way because they have
Yeah.
tens of millions of customers, and we want to be there to help them do that.
Yeah, and definitely we were talking about the scale here and that
Mhm.
the hosting providers are so close to small businesses. It's
Yeah.
what we are talking very often here on the podcast is that hosting companies need to understand that they have much bigger role than just put a website on a server.
Mhm.
There's so much to it, and so these big guys like that's why I'm a fan of Hostinger because they are so innovative with their products and they are super fast in implementing them. But
Mhm.
understanding your role and how can you be helpful for the businesses can help you definitely grow. So,
Yeah.
so you're suggesting that mail channels can be one of the solutions for that, right? With the
Yeah.
service.
So what we've been working on really hard for the last couple of years is building a transactional email API service, which is distinct from the SMTP relay service that we have traditionally offered to hosting providers. So
And
we
can you
now
tell
have
what's the difference? Yeah.
so we now have a full featured email API that allows developers to build applications that send mail. And so, like, if you're building an app of any kind, it could be an email campaign app, it could be a marketing automation app of some sort, or it could be any kind of little app you want to build that has to send out mail. Our email API can give you webhook feedback when that message is received into the queue, and at each step of message delivery, when the recipient opens the message, when they click on links, there's an API endpoint to fetch statistics back from the platform. It's a full featured email API that makes it easy to deliver mail, whether it's a handful of messages or if you need to send out hundreds of thousands of messages per hour.
Mhm.
And our edge, because there's obviously other companies out there that deliver mail from a transactional email API, where this has been something that's been around since probably 2008, right?
Yeah.
And even mighty Amazon has their simple email service, or SES. Our edge is
SendGrid,
that,
right? There's
sorry?
SendGrid. There's
Yeah,
SendGrid. We've
SendGrid.
been using
Yeah,
MailChimp. They had this. I don't remember the name, but they had like a different name
Mandrill.
because
Yeah.
yes, before it got swallowed, I guess.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot of there's a few major platforms out there, and I don't think there's anything particularly wrong with them. They're very mature. They have extremely mature documentation libraries. Everybody knows how to use them. There's lots of client code available. Developers are very familiar with them. Uh, the thing is, they're not really that good at dealing with email senders that have their own end customers. So if
Mm-hmm.
you have a
Mm-hmm.
SaaS application of any kind, and you want to enable your customers to customize the emails that get sent out, uh, it's really difficult to control for quality and abuse in that scenario. And the major email delivery platforms have very few capabilities to help you do that.
Mm-hmm.
For example, let's say that you want to build a SaaS app that allows small businesses to send out invoices to their clients. There's lots of SaaS applications that do that sort of thing, and
Yeah.
none of them allow for a lot of customization of those invoices, because as soon as you offer customization, phishing gangs come in, and they all of a sudden put the PayPal logo
These
up on
guys
top
again.
of the invoice, right? And and so you're a target. No matter, even if you just allow someone to swap their logo in and their name, you're now a target, and they're going to use you to send out phishing campaigns. This has held back a lot of SaaS companies from offering the kind of email customization that their customers would really like them to offer.
Mm-hmm.
And the existing transactional email service providers have set up their whole compliance operation to deal with just the entity who is purchasing the service from them.
Mm-hmm.
If that entity, if that SaaS provider doesn't have firm control over the content that their users are sending, then the response of the platform is to suspend the whole account and to say, you got to clean up your act. We've seen a lot of phishing and spam coming from your account. Well, that's pretty crippling. Like, imagine if you're Shopify and phishing goes out from some of your accounts, and then your email provider suspends Shopify's email delivery. You can see that that's not really that scalable, and it's holding
Yeah.
back the whole industry from offering something better to their customers. On the other hand, MailChannels has been dealing with multi-tenant email senders like hosting companies, where their customers are sending all kinds of unpredictable crap all day long.
Yeah.
We have a really fine-grained system for tracking the behavior of individual senders. And
Mm-hmm.
so we've been able to point that same system at email API traffic. And so we can give the customer immediate feedback on the quality of mail coming out of each of the sub accounts that they're sending
Yeah.
through. And we can automatically rate limit and block suspicious traffic for them without suspending their entire account, because that's just what we do. It's natural for us.
Okay.
So
So all
we've
these
yeah,
years that you've been building the filtering and the SMTP
yeah,
relay is actually being capitalized
yeah.
with the new transactional platform, right?
Yeah. And we see this as not so much stealing. Our opportunity is not so much to steal business away from the other platforms.
I mean, come on, you can do that.
but it's to enable SaaS providers to expand the kind of email customization that they can offer to their users. We want those invoicing companies to allow full customization of the invoices and not to worry
Hmm.
about abuse, because we will take care of that for them. And there's been a really great reception to that message with the first SaaS providers that we've engaged with. So we have one SaaS provider that has a really beautiful email campaign management system for marketers, specifically aimed at being used by online digital agencies.
Hmm.
And it's a great tool, amazing AI tool for generating beautiful looking campaigns very easily. And because of us, they've been able to just open the floodgates and send mail without
Yeah.
worrying about the consequences. Whereas when they were sending with another provider earlier this year, they got their account suspended and they were dead in the
Hmm.
water for 6 weeks
Hmm.
trying to fix that problem. Another provider came to us. They've been a SaaS provider for years, offering services within a particular vertical market, and they're the leaders in that segment. And they got suspended by Amazon in the summer for
No.
2 weeks. Amazon forced them to go through like resetting their API keys and and showing proof of identity and all this stuff, which is very understandable, but very unhelpful, right? So we're really stoked about what we can do for the whole SaaS industry in the coming year with our platform.
Wow. So it sounds like you are, well, providing some options to the hosting providers, but does it mean that mail channels is now shifting more towards the SaaS providers? Is that your main plan right now with the product?
What we're doing is we're unifying our offerings. So everybody, hosting providers and SaaS companies and developers are all just going to be buying email delivery services from MailChannels. And if you're a hosting provider, you're going to be essentially buying email sending plus a hosting package that has features that are optimized for what we know hosting providers need.
Hmm.
If you're a SaaS platform that's multi-tenant and you need to handle abuse for all of your users, that's just a different package. But the concept is it's a single price table, it's a single offering with just
Hmm.
different capabilities for the different customers. And we certainly don't intend to stop servicing the hosting industry. It's going to
Yeah.
be our bread and butter for a long time to come. And we also see a ton of growth. The majority of our growth as a company is from our own customers growing over time,
Hmm. Yeah.
whether it's companies like Hostinger or World Host Group or, the many others that we serve out of the top 100. They are doing really, really well. And we expect that will continue.
Perfect. Maybe we can talk about something else than mail channels. Are you involved with any other initiatives or any other businesses? What's up on your end?
I actually have my plate full with I have my plate quite full with MailChannels, to be honest.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm a father of three
Okay, that's
teenagers
okay.
and
That's
MailChannels.
already.
So I know we've talked about this personally. It is a lot. It's a lot of work just having those two things going on. I'm not looking for other side gigs at the moment. But
Okay.
what does keep the job really interesting for me is the constant flow of challenges. There's just
Hmm.
never a dull moment. Every single
Yeah.
day, there's some new challenge. We never feel like we're finished. We're finished building what is needed by the customers. And I've really enjoyed over the last 2 years getting myself trained up in deep learning
Hmm.
and machine learning. And so I regularly contribute to the company's efforts to build machine learning models. And we've been doing some really cool stuff in that area lately. Really, really cool stuff.
Okay. Anything that you can share that you are going to release, or this is just more internal stuff?
It's for the most part internal stuff. I mean, broadly speaking, what our models do is make sense of the information that's in email messages. So the meta information, which is like the IP address it came from, the domain names associated with the message, the headers and the body content, the links, all that stuff. So making sense of it in a way that allows us to group similar traffic together, right? Because
Hmm.
you're never going to know exactly. There's no like hard dividing line between what is good and what is bad. But what
Yeah.
your best hope in this field is to at least be able to say this traffic is in this particular island of behavior, And for this island of behavior, we want to treat it a certain way. And this
Yeah.
other email is over here in this other island of behavior. So we talk a lot internally about embedding models, where we're taking a bunch of signals, putting them through a model, and then out the other side we get these vectors that allow us to pinpoint a location in a high dimensional vector space, and then we can search to find other emails that are similarly located, and we can then figure out what we want to do with those guys. But that's essentially most of the ML work. It's just creating embedding models and working with them, and trying to do it at scale too. That's a challenge.
Yeah, that's probably the biggest challenge, is how to make it effective with such a volume can be impressive. Yeah. Right. I guess that's it, Ken. That was very, very interesting to hear how the things are working, how the industry is changing, how the spam works and phishing. But it's actually good to hear that you have constant challenges and your company has to evolve constantly. It means challenge, but also I guess it means opportunities, and your company can grow and navigate through all these changes, offer something new, enter new markets. So yeah, first of all, congratulations, and second of all, good luck on expanding it further and still having some fun out of it.
Thanks very much, Comrade. It's been a real pleasure talking to you. I appreciate you bringing me on.